Hello, thank you for your interest in Parthia. My name's David, and I'm going to be covering um, within the automations, there are items or ways to call automations called triggers. So we're going to be covering information on triggers within this video. If you have not already, I'd recommend watching the video on creating interrupts. I'll make certain to include a link to it in the description for this video because we're going to be creating a couple of interrupts during this. Now, unlike the other videos, I don't have any prepared script or information on this because I kind of wanted to go through and muddle through this um, while I'm actually kind of doing everything because I wanted to make it a little bit more organic. So apologize for any general confusion that might wind up occurring during this video. But going right into it, we're going to go through, we're going to bring up the help information on triggers. So we're going to type in as before as we have help, and then I'm going to click or run help client. And we can see here we've got this Parthia command that has the bulk of the help commands or buttons to click. We want to go through. We're going to look up information about automation. So Parthia automation is the command that'll give you all the information on our automation system. We can see here Parthia automation triggers. That's going to give us just a comparative to what you can do with triggers. Very brief message on what triggers are, and that it is actually a very good summary of what a trigger is. Um, but essentially, to just describe it, um, if in the other videos, if you've watched them, you'll see that when we go through and we try to create an interrupt or an automation, um, that we have these triggers. So in this case, in this one, it's going to be called a call pattern. Call if call pattern appears um, in the help area, it's going to be the same information as actually a trigger. So in this command in particular has an opportunity for two triggers. So this could be a trigger or a call pattern, and so could this as well. So that's why actually that the Parthia automation triggers help command is in within the create an automation or create an interrupt help menu. So we're going to go back here. I'm going to point a couple of things out. I've mentioned it a bunch in here, but if you have a trigger filled in as 0, it will wind up being called when you see on the screen the you are no longer busy message. That's the most common item you're going to use. And actually, I would stop and I'm just going to point out that triggers can be, well, it could be one of two things. They can be extraordinarily simple. And to briefly describe that, it's going to be when you use 0 to trigger when you are no longer busy. And then the other option is a trigger can be a number. And that means it's going to trigger or occur. The next command is going to trigger or occur after that many seconds. If you haven't watched the video already, I do have a video pointing out that the game Parthia connects to, the Eternal City, only allows for one command a second. So keep that in mind while you're making triggers that require a wait time. So triggers can be extraordinarily simple. If you stick to using the 0 for you're no longer busy or a number, just to wait that many seconds. And actually, the truth is, in most instances, those would be the only things that you'd wind up using. If you're very much so into automation, you can then begin to use text for an actual trigger. So we're gonna point this out here, and that's where triggers get either very complex, or and in some instances quite extraordinarily complex. What I would say is if you're not interested in complexity, you can actually stop watching this video. I'm only going to cover the text patterns from here forward. But because of the nature of the others are terribly simple, so we're not going to bother even covering those in this video. Um, But when we're going through and making that text pattern, it's got to be um, built off of the way Parthia sees the text. I know I briefly covered this in the interrupt video, the create interrupts video, but we have here this Parthia unfiltered text console. You can click this or run that command, and if we want to actually be able to see that another way, we can run Parthia automation, and we can see here it's actually in here as well. So in case you forget it, you can you can run that. And in fact, if I remember, I believe that any command um, has a shorthand. Any automations, Parthia automation command has a shorthand of auto, and I believe any Parthia interrupt command, yep, has a shorthand of interrupt. So you can do that as well to view this help message. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to click, or you can actually run the Parthia unfiltered text console. For me, I've already opened it previously, so it's in its own window. However, I'm going to point out it normally opens by default right here, and that's really like sliver thin window that you have to actually drag out manually. So I'm going to drag this out. I'm going to shrink it down a bit so it's not too much in our way while we're doing work here. And what is happening is every single time this winds up receiving text, the game receives text. This console is going to show it or view it um, the way you would wind up, or the way the actual client winds up seeing it. Portions of this are actually still weeded out. I'm not going to cover information on how to find them, but information like this map, it actually appears as a message. I didn't feel that it was going to be important for people making triggers, so I left it out intentionally. There's the map, there's the information you receive for making this compass, for your character statuses. So I left that information out from the unfiltered text console. I figured I couldn't imagine when you would find a trigger off of a map situation. So I just wanted to leave the ability for people to create these triggers easily off of text here from the unfiltered console. So what I'm going to wind up doing is let's create an interrupt that triggers when you arrive into a new room. So we have here this text. And this is how Parthia sees it. So Parthia sees you arrive, and I'm going to copy that guy. Oh, by the way, Control C will not work for these consoles. You do have to right click and click copy. So let's go through, let's create an interrupt. Let's name this guy test. And then we're going to have this interrupt start when you arrive appears on the screen. And I'm going to have the first command called after a 1-second wait. Press enter. And then we can see test is now up here. I'm going to click show because it's the easiest way to add a command. So I'm going to replace this with, let's say, look, and then I don't actually really need that, but let's go ahead and say the next command occurs after a second. It's going to only run a single time anyway. So there would be an example of something you might want to trigger off of is that maybe you want to do something every single time a new wounded soldier comes in the room. Maybe you want to start an interrupt that just goes through a healing sequence, just tries to do every type of healing for it, or maybe asks them the questions to at least get the information for you automatically. But there might be something you trigger off of. You can see here in the unfiltered text console, shows up far different than what you're actually going to wind up seeing within the game itself. Because within the game itself, it gives you gives you relatively, I mean, gives you readable um, information here. You don't see those quotes there. That way they appear here is just a simple quote because I've already gone through and I've filtered that out. So let's click show on this. So we have here that this interrupt is going to occur when the "you arrived" appears on the screen. I'm going to click to activate it. I'm going to save, and we're going to see if I made this correct. All right, so we have the interrupt test triggered. We looked, we received the look pattern, and then the interrupt test completed. Um, so boom. And then I'm going to point out something here. I'm going to say, I'm just going to say show. So we got that you arrived. So let's go. We're going to see what happens if I click you arrive. See, it triggers. So I'm going to get a little bit more in depth here because most of the time you're never going to need what I'm about to describe. But if you're just very much so into automations, you just really enjoy making these because they are kind of fun. In fact, I kind of find the developing portion even more entertaining than the game. The game's absolutely amazing, but I guess I just enjoy development too much. Maybe other people are the same way, and automations can kind of give you that feel for it. So, let's say you're just really interested, you just want to make some automations and have fun with them. Most of the time, you're just gonna use text. Um, However, I am gonna point out that if we go through, let's bring back up that automations window. Let's go run/auto. Let's go back. We're going to do the automations trigger. Now, we've covered the fact that you can do 0 is that you no longer busy. You busy message because it's so common. We wanted it to be 0, super easy to use. And then you can do number of seconds. Well, you can trigger off of text that appears on the screen. Actually, I've got a cover that you can use the colors. We'll do that in a moment. But I also wanted to cover that you can use regex characters. For anyone who is a software developer, very high chance you have a large amount of exposure to regex. Um, what regex allows you to do is replace a possible sequence of text that would appear in this case on the screen with a pattern, a predetermined pattern. I'm not going to go through and describe even the basics about regex. But regex is short for regular expressions. So if you want to look up information about that, it's going to be called regex or regular expressions. I'm going to leave a couple of sites that are useful for regular expressions, creating them, maintaining them, in the description of this video, um, but they are a more complex thing to do. So I'm going to see if we can go through and we're going to make that "you arrive" message work with when it only winds up appearing from the system. So not when somebody says "you arrive," and then that "you arrive" could appear anywhere at all. It's just a plain text message. So to do this, we're going to go ahead and click show. So we're going to just say there, let's say, all right, I want to edit this because that's the easiest way to do it. And you see here, it's going to automatically fill out all that information for us. Now, I'm going to use a regex pattern. The caret, this is the one regex item I'll cover for you. The caret, or looks like the upward arrow. And regex, or regular expressions, it means that this is the start of your sequence of texts. It's the only thing it means. It means that that you know what? I'm clicking the wrong items there. That the regex, uh, that the caret, there we go. Okay, that's the command that's going to get called. So let's go through. Actually, I'm clicking edit on the wrong item twice over. Okay, that the caret is where your string starts. So at the very start of the characters or the text, this. We've updated it. We're gonna say Parthia save all, and then we're gonna show to see like did this actually change? Yes, it changed. Okay, so let's go through. It's active. Let's see if these changes actually wound up working. All right, so they triggered here. All right, I triggered again. Let's try now. Say you arrive. Now you'll notice it doesn't trigger the way it did previously. That's because we've used that regular expression to say we only want um, that message to trigger. Yeah, I think I spelled it right. Nope, I spelled everything right. So we only want that that this interrupt to trigger when you arrive is the very first sequence of text um, that you would want to use. You know what? What we'll do is I'll cover one more regex character, it's the cache symbol, and what that means is that instead of the beginning of the text, that means this is the end of the text that you wind up receiving. Um, the chances are that those will probably be the two most common ones that you use. Um, and one thing I will do is I will say you can wind up replacing, for example, a series of spaces, a series of letters on the screen. You can wind up looking for specific words like we would with plain text, or you can say I only want this to work if there's numbers that appear on the screen. So the last item that I'm going to cover the fact that you can, if you don't want to use regular expressions for weeding out, you'll see how they have these color sequences here. These are these this basically this is what determines what color that message appears as on the screen. So if I go to Parthia automation triggers, you'll see here that if you have if you are when you're going through and you want to make a trigger, um, if you put color in the trigger, the word like the sequence color, and then when the sequence wants to end, that you put in slash color and say a wounded soldier, what it's going to wind up doing here, if I can, we're gonna do that. What it's going to wind up doing here is no matter what color this is, because within this game, uh, you can wind up changing these colors out for a lot of instances. So I wanted to leave you the ability to not need to make your own regular expression patterns for this. I've already pre-made these for you. So it doesn't matter what color sequence appears in this case. I'm not even certain if that's one that can be swapped out. But it doesn't matter what color sequence that would wind up appearing. If I click enter there, click save changes, click show, we have here that doesn't matter what color this guy appears as. You can change your color settings. Um, you could also even only trigger when it winds up appearing organically with color. So that way, if somebody says in the game, if they say it themselves, a wounded uridine soldier, that your interrupt or your automation is not triggering. So if we go through and also another thing that can happen here is, and this is one item that I'm glad we're running into. You can create an infinite loop. If you're not paying too much attention, I think we're going to create one here. Oh, yep, they're not. You know what? They're not colored and actually, you can still click them, but they're not colored when they show up in the screen. So I'm gonna look, and we've created an infinite loop. because what's happening, oh, is it only winds up triggering twice because now it looks like it triggered too rapidly. But what's happening there, the reason why it triggered more than once is because the interrupt I created looked, which meant that we saw a wounded soldier again, and in this case, it wound up looping what looks like just the two times. Um, or actually, I bet what happened is that the interrupt probably interrupted itself. Okay, yeah. But at any rate, what's happening here is it was triggering off of the fact that it saw a wounded soldier with the color message in it. That is the general information that I wanted to cover on triggers. Again, they can be extraordinarily simple, or just outrageously complex if you're willing or interested in using those regular expressions. My name is David, and again, thank you for your interest in Parthia.